Hey, what's up? It's your boy Rob Walker, and welcome to the Transcendent Legacy Circle. What is the Transcendent Legacy Circle, you ask? Great question. The Transcendent Legacy Circle is a company that's designed to help aspiring leader entrepreneurs develop their mindset and business skills to win in business and in life. When I started this company, I knew that there was a whole community that was hungry for leadership content. They didn't want stuffy, hard to understand leadership content. That's when I knew I had to be the change that I wanted to see. When I finally made up my mind, I decided to go ahead and start a podcast. And this podcast today, after going through many name changes, is called Psychology of the Grind. And here on Psychology of the Grind, we focus on all things leadership. That's leadership in corporate America, as well as leadership as an entrepreneur. So without further ado, let's set up episode 1. Let me first start off by saying this episode is extremely special to me. I had the opportunity to interview one of the greatest leaders that I know, my dad, Robbie C. Walker. And although no one is perfect, he has been one of the most consistent people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And when I say consistent, I mean in both action and attitude. It was just a pleasure just to be able to have him on the podcast and be able to pick his brain. You'll even get a chance to see my nervousness and hear and see my nervousness, which I think is really cool and wouldn't change for anything just because there is so much respect there. We got a chance to go through his experience as a sergeant in the U.S. Army, all the way up till retirement and present day with his newfound organization, Healing Invisible Wounds, which is for military veterans who experience PTSD. If you're not familiar with this book right here, Leadership 2.0, our interview is an absolute masterclass in this book without even trying. When you first open this book, they tell you that there's a test in here that you should take. And that test is going to ultimately tell you what areas you need to focus in on, where you're weak. It also explains some of your strengths. And on page 3, they talk about core leadership skills. And on page 7, it talks about adaptive leadership skills. And they talk about things like vision and having the courage to lead, decision making, communication, mobilizing other people, taking risks, being result focused, agility. We literally discussed almost every last one of those topics without even trying. We almost hit almost every last one of those topics. And so I end with this. I apologize for the quality of the video. We were having some technical difficulties with our initial setup, but if you're just listening to the audio, soak it in. And if you're watching the visual, I just threw it up because, well, why not? I introduce to you the first episode of Psychology of the Grind. Rob Walker with Robbie Walker. Peace.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be the first. That's awesome. Glad to be here and to participate with you to get everything jump started. So, willing to share any information you need and tell you how I got to where I am.
No, for sure. I think a great place to start would be just maybe like a little bit of your background, like maybe just kind of go through some of the positions that you've held leading up till retirement.
Well, it starts back at an early age. I think being on like the sports field and basketball and being a point guard for the team, you learn to execute different strategies and direct people, which is an awesome thing if you can get people to follow you. However, as you grow older, you have to have some education behind you to know what you're talking about. to in order to lead. So over the years, I've done everything from the military, which was my first real test of leadership. And once I uh, completed that mission, I got out and went back to school, which is you find yourself in school with younger people as a veteran, but you got all this life experience, and that doesn't really come clean in a book. So you have lived experiences so that you can teach and guide others. And then so you take that and you utilize it in the best way possible to benefit yourself and others, family, friends, and people who you know. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. My life experiences has led me to be a, a owner, a business owner, a small business owner, a leader in the American Legion and other patriotic groups, and then also uh, being a landlord. So you learn how to deal with people in many aspects.
No, that's really cool. That's really cool. And of course, obviously I've kind of been around and kind of been around it a little bit. So I think it's a great place to start. I think one of the things that I guess first comes to my mind is when you think about like some of your earliest memories of just like leading others, as well as like leading yourself. You mentioned like basketball and kind of starting there on the court. Was there anything, I guess I would say like maybe like within your household where you kind of had to like take the reins early on and kind of got your first chances at leading others?
Yeah, actually, I not only led others, I led my older siblings. So I was in charge of them, which is kind of odd, but they respected and honored what I had to say. But my validation came from my parents, who knew that I had this in me, and everybody understood. As long as you were doing the right thing, the outcome would be good. But when there was, you have to be trusted to do the right thing. So I think that's what put me over the top uh, of my brothers and sisters. I had that trust and confidence from my family.
And would you say at first it was challenging, or did they just kind of go right along with it like right from the start?
Well, I think it's a pecking order, but yeah, I think it eventually fell into place. And it's what's funny is you have this authority, but you can't abuse it.
Right.
But a lot of times when the parents weren't in the vicinity, you get a little bit of retribution, sometimes. But overall, I think they learn to respect that.
Moving on to like when you decided to make that transition from just high school into say like early college and then going into the military. What was that time like when you had to make those tough decisions?
I think what helped with the decision was knowing uh, what hard work really was, and so I credit my parents. So when you work hard and you earn money from that hard work, you're not too quick to go and blow it. You want to save it. You want to do because you know how hard it is to get it. So with that type of discipline, going into after leaving high school, going into the couple of years of college, and then into the military, it was almost seamless because I had the discipline and the I guess the education and everything to just utilize that system to promote myself because it's the type of system where they want you to excel. So if you have all the right tools in the right system, that's easy to do.
And what would you say like a lot of that early discipline came from? Would you say that was like just the way that you guys grew up, or would you say like that
Yeah,
was just more of just who you were as an individual?
I think it's both, but more so the way you were brought up. back in those days, in the early '60s, uh, there was a there was a simple time, but most of the mandate was there was no questions. Like you see kids now talking back to the parents and questioning and everything. It wasn't that time. You did what you were supposed to do, and you would reap whatever benefit by doing that. But if you went against the grain, obviously, uh, I had a lot of secondhand conditioning. But I didn't want to, challenge the authority like that. But you know, it led me to be a better person.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. When you think about like starting to sort of like develop that mindset that to kind of cultivate that leader within you, what were those early days like? What were you doing a lot of reading or like kind of like because it's different than today's time where there's like Google, if you want to, go on Google to ask it something, it can spit something back out to you. I know it wasn't like that back then. So was that time more, like reading books, or was it just reaching out to people who had been there, done that, or what was
Uh,
that like?
I've always been the type to be around older folks.
Hmm.
So I had a like a old soul. Like I learned. I didn't do a lot of talking. I listened, and that is probably the key to me is getting all that knowledge while other kids are out, you know, chewing bubble gum, jumping rope, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was next to the older hats, getting sucking up whatever knowledge they wanted to give me, and then that led me to even though I was a quiet kid, you know, coming up, when I did say something, people were interested in what I was saying.
And I think I find that a lot too, like with myself, just the fact that because I don't say a whole lot when I do have something to say, people are
Yeah,
more apt to hear me out than not. Um,
absolutely.
when you first joined the service and and you started to get your feet wet and you're kind of looking around just trying to survey the landscape, what was some of the things that you noticed, maybe like let's say with the people who you were coming in with, were they did you find that you were like more ambitious than a lot of them were, or did a lot of them kind of come in ambitious?
Well, I think like I said earlier, it was really competitive.
It was.
You don't like come into the service to stay one rank. You
Mhm.
either want to excel or it's always about going to the next level, whether it's enlisted or officer ranks. And so you have to compete, and you have to find that peace in yourself that you're one of the best, and that you can compete. Uh, so I enjoyed that, and after that followed me into the civilian world, where positions come open, you put your best foot forward, and you show them what you have, what you're working with, and so all of those tangibles from that early age, being in charge of older siblings, and so you're not afraid of the moment once you get to that point. You just step into the shoes and do what you have to do. But when you're successful, you know, it just leads to more greater uh, heights.
When you, I mean, obviously when you step into those shoes and you get your opportunities, you face some sort of setbacks. Maybe you might get some pushback from some people who don't want to take you seriously or whatever the case may be. Did you have any of that during those early days?
Absolutely, you even have it in your success. You're going to be challenged by different. Sometimes we call them informal leaders. They're always the ones outside the box that
Yeah,
want to have their own crew and talk about you're not this and you're not that. But that's what you have to overcome in order to be great or to be successful. You got to even have them in your camp. And so, if you can change their mindset, that's a challenge. And
yeah.
to get that resolved, if they see you successful, they're more likely to come over. But you need that to challenge you, because if everything was gravy, you wouldn't struggle to become higher. So I take those on, and even today at this age, And even though you've been tested and people know that, that don't mean they won't come for you again.
Hmm.
So it's always a evolution where you gotta either meet the moment or meet the demand, or you gotta go higher, and then you challenge yourself, and that in itself is awesome if you can do it.
And I think that brings up a good point. So like as you're you're feeling your way around, early mid 20s, all in that time period, and you're still figuring out who you are as an individual. How were you able to figure out what your leadership style was?
I think my leadership style, it should be based on your personality and your character, the type of leader. Like if you're loud and you know braggadocious and you want to tout what you got, there's people like that walk around with everything on their sleeve. They got to be heard. They're the loudest in the room. But when you're confident in what you're doing and you know what you know by
Hmm.
by getting the education, it's the thing that success is built on. Education, knowledge, leadership, all these types of skills, and you got to know who you are. So you may want to be loud. You see somebody, okay, he's loud, let me be loud, but that may not work for you. So you have to be who you are, and then utilize that to your advantage.
Absolutely.
Like you said, if you don't talk much and people hear you when you say something, I want to hear what's the rest of that. Why did you say that? You don't give them what they need, but know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that's key. That's key. I know in this last role that I held, when they brought on a bunch of new leaders, you had people who were at different ages and different stages, and so what I found was you had the younger people who were well, as they say, doing the most. They were doing the most because they were
Right,
trying to show that they deserved to be there. Whereas you had other people who were more like me, where, it's kind of like, let them go ahead and have that because I'm confident and I know that in what I bring to the table. So I don't feel the need to
right,
be seen all the time. I can have my one-on-one conversations, and in the moment while we're all together, they can be the ones that are loud and I can, play my part.
right,
So I realized that really fast that you have those that they feel the need to be heard because they're trying to make sure that they're qualified to be there.
right, right. Yeah, and that's usually the case. But people usually see something within you, and then you have to eventually see it in yourself, so that you can utilize it, you know. So it could be a skill set, it could be a character, it could be, there's a lot of things that make up who you are, and you don't have to be someone else to be successful. You got to be you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because I know like some of the things that I've seen is like for me in my role, I was a people leader. And so my approach was let me talk to this person one on one if I can. If I have to talk to a large group, I'll talk to a large group. I'll keep it very general. I'll, convey the message, whatever the message might be. And then in that one on one setting, okay, so now let's tell me what's going on with you as a person. If we can build this one on one connection, then I can figure out how I can help you with whatever you might be dealing with. And in
right,
turn, I expect for you to meet me where I need you to be and to produce and to put out. And for me, that worked for me. But for the person who I had to report to, they're looking for outcomes. So when you have other leaders who are more, they don't really care for the whole one-on-one get to know, they're more so result driven versus getting to know their people. I understand that there's different types of leadership, that there's different times for that. Was there ever a time for you where you had to kind of go back and forth between the two, whether it was driving outcomes versus getting to know?
I think the military was. excellent at that particular type of situation because no matter what your rank or title is, you're always in between somebody, either lower and higher. You're somewhere in the middle, and so you have to deal with that. And it comes in all types of sizes, race, gender. Uh, it's just incredible what you learn to deal with. So there's nothing you can't really handle if you can handle yourself. If you can be who you are and not let people push you outside of who you are. You know, I
Well,
think is the ingredient that you gotta figure.
well, I know it's kind of like we kind of talked, the other day, and you were just kind of saying, leadership in the military is different, in many cases because it's life or death in a lot, in a lot of cases, and
Yes.
so you kind of have to listen to, you know what I mean, because it could really be that serious. And
Okay.
so I think that that's actually really cool in the sense that that's a whole different level of leadership. You know what I mean when you think about it that way.
It gives you like um, um, great joy. Like if you to be in a uh, combat situation and you survive it, because everybody's dependent on each other,
Hmm.
in order to accomplish the mission. And even though that's a kind of a drastic view, I mean, civilian life is not that complicated, but you still have an outcome that you want to obtain. So once you learn how to lead, and when everybody buys in, like you said, we have maybe one or two outsiders, but when they see the success is for the whole team. Everybody wins.
Yes.
So if you want to be on the outside, you know, you may find yourself on another team, or if you can't correct what it is that you, and not to say that somebody else can't have good ideas or uh, they can't be heard, because that's the biggest thing is you have a voice in whatever you do, and you can't squelch yourself, especially if you think um, what you think is a better idea versus someone else who come up with you know something that works or doesn't work, or it could be it just makes the task harder. You can make it easier. It's
Hmm.
just you don't have to be all of that, but you have to utilize what you got,
And,
whether that's your skills or your people.
and you use the word that we used to use a lot, and that is buy-in. And that
Mm-hmm.
when my job was to um, help these contractors do their job at the highest level, they tend to come with a lot of problems because um, I'm kind of trying to dance around the name of the company, but the way that the company worked is you had people who worked directly for the company, and then you had contractors. So the people who worked directly for the company, they understood that this could be a career path for them. Whereas for the contractors, this was more of just a job until the next contract came along.
Right.
So the goal is to try to help them understand how important their role really is without them actually being, a part of the team, so to speak, was a challenge in itself. And so you had to get them to buy in to the overall bigger picture, even though they weren't going to be true beneficiaries of what was to come. So whether it was
Right.
bonuses or things of that nature, they weren't going to partake in those things, but we still needed them to be on board to get the job done. And so
Exactly.
and so early on, that was one of my biggest challenges. Well, I wouldn't say it was one of my biggest challenges because I was able to directly relate to them because I had been one of them at one point in time, like many years ago. I had so for them, I was like I could empathize with where they were at in their journey. So when we had one-on-one conversations, I could say, I've been in your shoes before. This is what you should be expecting to get out of this opportunity while
Right.
you're sitting in the seat. And here's how you maximize that without going into great detail, since they weren't in any danger of being able to rise through the ranks of the company. But
That's
just
vital. Yeah.
that buy-in is so key because people they ask questions they want to know, but without it, you have nothing,
But
So
if you were unable to answer those questions, then that they would bypass you. They would look for other leadership and see, and that's where you were effective because you had the answers. You were there, and you know what to do and how to do it, and even make it better or make somebody's life easier by knowing little steps. But it's a perfect point. You don't jump from A to C. You got to go through all the steps
mhm.
to become a leader, like we
Were,
did.
were there any I guess like any habits or skills or anything that you did just maybe you saw someone else do or something that you did on your own merit that kind of helped you start to develop maybe like a routine or some habits that helped you in any way?
I look for I look for people who are similar to me. I look for people who may not be so loud, may not be so uh, boisterous, and find out how they went about their work. And a lot of times it came down to knowledge. Most of them were excellent education uh, gathering. I always look to gain uh, education the whole way through my whole journey. That's been the one thread that's coming through uh, up until now. So I I tend to let I'm the type of leader that I let people speak their minds, especially to one another, and just know what the outcome is. It's got to be and how we get to it. We're going to use the best option,
Mhm.
but be prepared to make that call. And once you make it, you have to live with it.
You know, I know we didn't touch on them specifically, but you mentioned, entrepreneur, you have your own business now. You've done the military thing, you've done corrections, you've done all of these different things. Was there one that challenged you any more than the other? Any particular field that
I
challenged you
think
more than the other?
I think combat challenged me the most. So anything else was a step down. So once I got out of service, I felt like there was no. I mean, not that you can't be armed outside of the military, but coming off the battlefield to civilian life, uh, the adrenaline is a big drop. And, but the competitiveness is still there. So you may be in a different system, but you still want to elevate in
Mhm.
that system. And so no matter where I find myself, it's always about trying to grow or become better or to do more. Um, I think I'm an overachiever. Uh, I don't know how I got there, but it must be something about setting goals and reaching them that drives me. So that's the way I go about life.
Do you still use well, let me rephrase that. What are some of the things that you still, I'm gonna say, carry with you to this day that you may have taken away from the military, whether it's, getting up at a certain time or a certain schedule or routine or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
Because that's what they put in front of you all the time, and so you can't be a leader if you can't meet those obstacles. So life is can be an obstacle. Job can be an obstacle. Uh, Finding ways around or through or over an obstacle is what the military. I had it from my life experience, and
Mhm.
it carries over into my personal life. And every situation is not great. I try to meet people where they are,
Mhm.
and then try to go from there. So, even in my business, when people come in, I find out where they are, and then I pick them up from there and take them to the next level. And so they're amazed because um, I don't know, their expectations are met and sometimes exceeded. Um,
No,
but it's all about finding out how who they are, where they are, what they need.
No, and I love that because you know, the last time I was home, and you had your latest project, which I wanted to kind of spend a little bit of a couple minutes on. You're sort of heading this thing up, and so what has it been like for you as far as like it's a two-part question, like setting the vision, the culture, the mission for this latest project. Obviously, I know you're not doing it alone, and then also I guess the second part of that question would be during my time there at the Legion, everybody kept coming up to me telling me how great you were and how you've been so instrumental in all these different things. Um, what would you what would you attribute that to as well?
I would say C.W. Walker and Lizzie Mae Walker, who had the trust and the love for me to, you know, tell me who I was and told me to go be that. Go out there and do that. You have it. So it's funny, you get these accolades from people, but it's a steady stream of work, you
Mhm.
know. So if they call on you, you always answer the bell. So I
Mhm.
think that's probably part of it. I'm never going to shy away from what has to be done and how we could do it. So once they see it done, they know you can do it.
Yeah.
So if I need you, I'm going to call you, and then we'll figure it out. But the mission, kind of just like in life, sometimes things just grow. You can plant a seed and it starts growing, and you have to manage it. You have to water it. You got to cultivate it. You got to do all of this stuff to make it the prize that you want it to be. So what I'm finding out with the healing invisible wounds, mental health, uh, PTSD, things that the veterans are dealing with and the families, we're tapping into private issues that most people don't want to talk about. But once they do, they open up, and it just leads to, okay, so we can do this, we can do that, we can add to this, and it's just growing and growing, and you could be kind of frightened of that growth
Mhm.
because you're like, well, I didn't mean for it to be,
That.
you know, but it is, and you got to stick with it. You can't like pull
Yeah.
back once you started it. Like I started it, and there's been times where I've like, well, I'm partially retired. I could go back to that, but people won't let you now. You know, you're the leader. You must carry on, and and they're all enthusiastic, and so when you're feeling a little low, or you just maybe a little tired, they will lift you up. The team will, and they all have parts. They have buy-in, like you said. They have ideas for which way this direction could go,
Mhm.
and you got to be savvy enough to listen and take chances, I suppose, to really be successful.
Yeah. I know one of the words we used to throw around a lot is being agile. And
Yeah.
that was whenever I would go into a new role or try to take that next step, that was the one thing that they always wanted to know is if you were agile. Were you flexible? And if you're are you able to pivot on your, like quickly? Like if something changes, can you go with it or is it going to hold you back? And so I noticed that that's just life, just being agile in everything that you do. So that makes a lot of sense, just having to go with it and if it turns out to be
Yeah.
bigger than you expected, it's
Yeah.
just what it's supposed to be.
It's a great point. And coming through the ranks, a lot of people want to be successful, but they don't really know how. And because you're successful in this uh, corner of the world, doesn't mean you're going to be successful in another, even though you may have the traits. But it's all about really knowing who you are, what you bring, what you know. Not that you can't learn, but I think that's where the education piece comes in. The more knowledge you get, less likely to be afraid of trying something new. Um, but you want to bring your toolkit with you
Yeah,
from where you came from,
yeah. If
and
something doesn't work,
exactly.
you know, it, no, I think I feel like this time went by so fast. I there's so much more that I wanted to get to, but um, I think that what we may have to do is do a two-parter of some sort. Um, I think that there's a lot to be taken away from what we've discussed, and I think that there's a lot of value there. I think for anyone listening, um, I think the biggest things to pick up on are some of those key attributes and things that make a leader a true leader. Being agile, not being the loudest person in the room, being true to who you are. A lot of things that we've talked about. And so I want to say thank you for being the first person to sit down and talk with me on this topic. I actually have very big plans for this. I can see it. I'm kind of more of a big picture person, so it's going to be me scaling it down and having like a team to kind of help me do the day-to-day stuff. But I can see the bigger picture. I can see this being
Well,
really
I
helpful for a lot of people.
wish you much success, and hopefully I can come back sometime. Pick up where we left off, or watch some of your upcoming episodes. But wish you
Yeah,
all the yeah.
I know that there's an event coming up in September. You know the date for that?
Actually, it's two events. The one in September is for homeless veterans. It's September the 7th.
September 7th?
That's we're gonna working in my area, assisting my wife with taking care of these veterans who are homeless. And then on November the 9th, which is a Saturday too, we'll be doing our third conference for Healing Invisible Wounds, which is mental health, family systems, how to work through these um, problems and situations that veterans find themselves in.
No, perfect, perfect. We'll be sure to plug both of those. And thanks again, Dad. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.